So let's talk about your nervous system. So when you're doing this work with me, like I already mentioned, you're going to be on two parallel paths. And one of those parallel paths is that you're going to be doing small incremental changes in your daily life. And part of this is starting to do work around healing the nervous system and building capacity within your nervous system. So I'm sure if you've been in the healing game for long enough, or if you're just on Instagram, you've heard a lot of buzzwords around nervous system regulation, dysregulation, vagus nerve, polyvagal theory. And so I'm going to hit on some highlights for some of these things today, but I'm also going to give you a framework around starting to identify the nervous system state that you're in so you can begin to do exercises to regulate it, and also some things that you can do to build some capacity in your nervous system. So, really, you don't need to be an expert to get going on this process, though, feel free to do additional work beyond this if you like and you feel called to do that. But let's really talk about why this is so important, why all the buzz about the nervous system. The truth is, the reason there's so much buzz around the nervous system is because if your nervous system is dysregulated, it's causing a lot of havoc in your daily life and your quality of life between emotional dysregulation and also deeper and bigger things that are happening probably to your physical body because of this dysregulation. So let's talk about the symptoms and really the symptoms that you may be experiencing, and also kind of the why behind why you shouldn't be doing any of this work. One of the jobs of the nervous system is to be our surveillance system, right? It's trying to keep us safe. And so a lot of times what ends up happening is our surveillance system is broken. It's kind of tweaked on high, and it's being hyper vigilant and assuming that everything is dangerous. So this is putting our body in fight or flight to a chronic degree, which then results in our body constantly being given signals to shut down processes like digestion and repair that are good for the body so that it can send stress hormones or cortisol to the body to stay vigilant and to fight or flight, right? That's why that state is called fight or flight. Now, fight or flight is great when your system is regulated and something threatening does actually happen. But for most of us, that's not what we're experiencing. We're experiencing this like chronic on button when it comes to fight or flight, even when that's a low level activation and we're just constantly being fed those stress hormones that are never allowing us to come down and rest and start to detox and do all the healthy things that our system needs to do to repair. Um, so, what is the reason that this is happening? This is really for a couple reasons, and I think a lot of people are experiencing both. So, one of the reasons is trauma that is stored in the body. So, we've got these wounds, you can call them traumas, you can call them micro traumas, whatever you feel comfortable with. And these are from past events that have happened in our body. And they're being triggered by everyday events, right? Like that time that no one picked you up from school is now being triggered when your boss doesn't respond to your email. That's just an example for. Um, but these unprocessed events are now coming up and in your daily life, and you're getting triggered over them and activated over them, right? Which is really not healthy for your nervous system to constantly be spiking over little small stressors like your boss not responding to your email. The second part is, or the second reason is, you may have never had a healthy nervous system to begin with. So, our nervous system is not actually formed when we're born. It's developed as we are children. And so, our nervous system is going to be developed based on our caregivers, who's taking care of us, and also what's happening in those early formative years, right? So we might have a caregiver who has a really great nervous system, but let's say maybe we get dropped off with a babysitter that doesn't have a great nervous system, or we're in a home that's not super safe, even though we have a loving, healthy home when mom is around or when mom and dad are around. So these formative years, it's really when we're starting to attach and connect and regulate with our caregivers. And if that is broken or in some way is unsafe for us, then we never have a healthy nervous system to begin with. Another reason that you might have this or have never formed a healthy nervous system is if you were raised in a home where it was unsafe or it was inconsistent. Unsafe doesn't have to mean physical abuse. Unsafe can honestly just be, people in this house are moody and the rules change every day. One day I can sit on the couch and eat my ice cream, and the next day I get yelled at. And so I never know what I can do, what I can't do. I don't know what is safe. I don't know what isn't safe. And so what ends up happening is your nervous system, which becomes that, which is your surveillance system, it kicks into hyper surveillance. And what it starts doing is recognizing every tone of voice, every micro expression, every sound, every smell in the house to assess what's going on today. Am I safe today? Am I safe in this moment? And now you have built a surveillance system that is doing that for your entire life. Everywhere it goes, it's surveilling. Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Right? And that takes a lot of energy to do that work, which wears you out, is really, really super draining and tiring. And so, how you might see this showing up in your life, right? The symptoms of what that looks like in your life and in your body is that you may experience points where you're like high energy, right? Because of stress hormones, they give you a little lift. And so you're moving around, you're doing stuff, you're busy, and then you hit a wall because you can only be up for so long. You can only rev high for so long. And then you hit probably a burnout phase that's also known as freeze. And so you might go through this cycle of energy, go, 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 and then stop and burn out. If you don't recognize that cycle in yourself, that's okay. Not everybody has that cycle, but some other symptoms that you might notice around this dysregulation of the nervous system could be anxiety, brain fog, you're tired a lot, you're struggling to relax, like you might be sitting on the couch and you're thinking, I need to do this thing, I need to do this thing, I need to do this. It could even be when you're on vacation, right? And you're like, I gotta get back and play in the garage. It's like this inability to just chill out. It can also manifest in your emotions, right? Your emotions could swing back and forth, or they could even go through points of feeling really flat, like there's no color in life and everything just seems kind of blah. So, are any of the things that you're experiencing? Does this sound familiar? Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you are experiencing this because we're at a point in our society where this is chronic and pervasive, and most people are dealing with symptoms of dysregulation, or they've been, on the healing path and doing work around this dysregulation. So now let's get into talking more about the nervous system from the point of view of polyvagal theory and the vagus nerve. So what we call the vagus nerve, it's actually two pairs of nerves, and they're on the right and left-hand side of the body. And the reason that this nerve is what's getting so much buzz, why it's such a high priority and it's important, and it's because this nerve is so um, long or big. It runs through so many different parts of the body, and it has three branches that impact our fight, flight, and our shutdown, and also something else called our ventral vagal response, which is like the feel good, connected, loving response, right? So this nerve is important for the fact that it has these different branches and that it is flowing through so much of our body and our vital organs. So when it's impacted, it impacts us in a lot of different places. So for the nerve runs through the eyes, the jaw, the mouth, the throat, the tongue. There's eye exercises that you can do to actually trigger a response from the nerve. Lots of different exercises actually that you can do to um, get responses from the vagus nerve and begin a calming effect. It goes through the colon, the digestive center, digestive tract, the kidneys, liver, the stomach, the lungs, right? So you'll feel it in the front part of the lungs here. And so you'll notice that this is going to impact all of these autonomic systems, right? So the digestive system, our respiratory system, our heart rate, all of these things that we don't have any ability to, that we're not thinking about, rather. We're not thinking about, they're just automatically, the heart rate is starting to, increase when we experience something stressful, increase when we start to get activated, go into fight or flight. And so this vagus nerve has a huge impact on our body and our experience. And so it's helpful to start to recognize where these responses are happening in the body. For me, I personally found it super helpful to notice that, when I was feeling that warm, open expansiveness in my chest, that is a ventral vagal response. And that's because the ventral vagal branch, part of that branch is in the front of the chest. Now, the stress response is also there as well, but it was helpful for me to know, like, oh, that's what's happening. Like, I'm feeling this softness, I'm feeling this warmness. This is a ventral vagal response. Okay, great. Or that, like getting the jitters in your stomach when you're feeling nervous, or some people say like the nervous poos, right? It's because that nerve is going down into the guts and then into the intestines. So part of your work as you are beginning to heal your nervous system and also build this capacity within your nervous system is to develop this body awareness. And so I find it helpful to know where this nerve is, not details about that, but to have an understanding so that you can recognize these telltale signs when they're happening. For example, I have a client who her telltale sign for her, one of her triggers is that she like starts to hold her breath. Like she's kind of like, and we had multiple sessions where she would get triggered and would be like, "Ooh, I can't breathe." Like, okay, great. It's a great sign for you that you're activated. So, really, the goal when we're healing the nervous system is to create a responsive, resilient nervous system, right? We want a nervous system that can stand up to the challenges of our life. Um, and you're probably going to have to make some adjustments in your life to do this. You probably can't keep maybe all the go, go, go stuff that you're doing. There may be points where you're like, hey, I really need to shift this. But ultimately, it's not about cutting so much stuff out of your life as much as it's building the capacity to be able to do the things that you have in your life. So think what you're doing here as you're building capacity with your nervous system is you're building the muscles, right? The muscles of the nervous system, or you're building the stamina of the nervous system. And that when you're doing this, you're increasing your window of tolerance so that you can experience more stressors without going into the rev high place or going into the shutdown place. So let's say right now that your window of tolerance is like, I can handle one bad email before I freak out and go into red mode, right? So let's get you to a place where you can start experiencing more of life stressors, because the reality is we live in, we live in cities, we live in places where we're bombarded by stressors and nervous system activation and stimulants. We've got car horns honking, or in traffic. We've got light pollution, sound pollution. And if we're not able to handle these things without stressing out or without shutting down, then we're not going to be able to be capable of managing our lives, living our lives. Um, so what I hope that you are getting from this is that, your nervous system, it's an unconscious surveillance system, and it's always on the lookout for your protection and safety. And when it detects something that's unsafe and that triggers you by increasing your heart rate, impacting your breath, pumping energizing hormones into your bloodstream, and getting you ready for the hard work of fighting, then you know that you have been put in an activated fight or flight response. Um, so I want to show you a model that we're going to use for the work to start healing the nervous system and start identifying the states. And we're going to be using the nervous system elevator. I did not create this. This is actually from a book called Healing Your Nervous System, and it came out in January 2024. Highly recommend it. And in this book, what I really love is that she creates a really accessible model for people that are going through the process of healing their nervous system. And she breaks it down in a way that is extremely digestible and gives you step-by-step actions and tools that you can take. So we're going to be borrowing this model. And in this model, you'll see that she has broken out fight or flight into 3 different levels. There's the red level, the yellow level, and the green level, all levels within the nervous system elevator. And what this does is this shows us that fight or flight is not all or nothing. It's not like you're activated or you're not activated. And it also shows us that being in an activated state is not necessarily a bad thing. It's really about how high that we are activated and for how long we're at that high activation. So what we're aiming for is our nervous system to be at a place where it's responding really at the right activation level for the thing that is happening in life. Now, if you are in a high speed, chase, and you need all the focus and attention you can have, you probably do need to be in a very high level of activation. So just really, it's not about any of these are bad. It's really about how long you're where and really increasing the window of tolerance. So for the red here, this is the acute stress response and full alertness. So this would be if you were rating your fight or flight and you were saying that you are the highest level of intensity, you're at like an 8, 9, or 10. That's going to be what that is. And you're going to feel that in your body again, in all of those places that you have the vagus nerve running through, right? You're going to have the pounding heart, you're going to have the shallow breath, and you're going to notice the muscle tension. What you're going to have going on in your mind is you might be catastrophizing, like freaking out, like this is going to be horrible, this is awful. You may even notice that you go into tunnel vision, the world gets a little bit smaller, things get very narrow, you start to lose the capacity for higher reasoning and functioning, start losing it, the ability to do that higher level thinking, and you're getting into that fear mode. So this is where you start to see everybody as, fight or flight, right? You're running or you're fighting. So that's when you start to see people as potential threats, people that you want to fight with, right? This may feel very chaotic, like you're on a battlefield. The second level or of state is the yellow state, which is the treadmill of cognition overload. And this is going to be a lower level of fight flight activation. So if you were going to rate this might be like a 4 or a 5, 6 level of activation. And it tends to happen when you've got a lot of things that are demanding, multitasking. You come back from vacation or a long weekend and you open your email and you see you've got 300 unread emails and you're like, oh my God, you're just trying to go through the email and you're feeling overwhelmed and your brain is shutting down and you're reading halfway through the email and you're realizing that you can't process anything that you're reading because you're just like, I'm never going to be able to get this done. This is too much and I have this to do. And what am I going to do? And oh my God. And right. And it's that overload happening mentally, right? And your pulse is quickening, your muscles are tightening. And so you're unconsciously feeling very unsafe in that moment. And then the third level of activation is the green state, which is actually a flow state. So this is you're relaxed, you're focused, you're able to just be doing your work, you're jamming. It almost feels like effortless, right? You're like, oh my God, I just wrote 3 pages in 5 minutes. I was just going, it was flowing through. And so this is a great example of how fight or flight, you can actually be in fight or flight and ventral vagal at the same time. And you can be in a low level activation that gives you the energy that you need to do the work that you're doing and not be overwhelmed and not be in a bad or negative fight or flight, variation. So before we get into the last two levels, I want to go over and look at tools to regulate. Here's the thing to know about tools to regulate. I want you to start finding out what helps you regulate. There's a plethora of ways to regulate the nervous system. These are some examples that I'm giving, but feel free to cultivate your own and what you notice your body really responds to. Give these a try. If these don't really seem to be your jam, we can find you some other ones. There's lots of videos and lots of resources available. But the key things that I want you to keep in mind is that when you're trying to regulate, when you're in a red state, that you're wanting to burn off all of that energy, right? The body just fed you a ton of cortisol and a ton of energizing hormones so that you could run or fight for your life. Therefore, you have all of this extra energy to burn off in your body. So do things that are movement, right? Start moving it. You can actually feel it in your body as you're moving, and you can start to move into the places where it's at and just kind of move it through. You can also do horse lips or flutters to get some of that nervous energy out, and do that until you're feeling that come down happen and that shift happen. Another great one I love is verbal vomiting, where you're tapping, right? You can tap on the top of your head, you can tap on your karate chop, and you're allowing yourself to express. Keep in mind that that vagus nerve is right here, right along your throat, and it wants to say some stuff, and it wants to be like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is happening, and he's such a jerk, and how could he say that, and da 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 da. Sometimes your system just needs to purge some stuff out, and we try to hold it in instead because we think it's not appropriate or it's rude or whatever. Letting go of the fear of whatever is going to come out of your mouth, just knowing that, being objective about it, right? Like, oh, this is just something my body needs. Like sometimes I got to go to the bathroom and, I got to move through things. Just let myself move through this. For yellow, you're not having as much excess energy. Your body, right, isn't revved as high. And therefore, I like to take this energy, if you're at a lower level, and just shift it, right? Instead of trying to get rid of that energy, like why not pull it in and embrace it and shift it to something more positive? So I'll watch like maybe a 2-minute video that's funny. And then instead of feeling anxious, I'll take that energy and feel kind of light and happy and good, right? Or you can breathe into your heart for 3 minutes. Or this is a really good one where you can just like do some juicy stretching and get in there. Or a 5 senses meditation, right? Noticing what you're hearing, what you're smelling, what you're feeling. Now, the reason that these are separated and there are different tools is because if you are trying to use, let's say the yellow tools when you're in a red zone, you're going to get frustrated. So if you're all the way revved up here and you're like, let's get back into my body and smell the roses and feel the sensations, you're not going to have burned up all that excess energy that is coursing through your body, and you're just going to be more frustrated, right? When you're all the way up here, you can't force yourself to come down and try to be Buddha and be calm and be chill. It's just not going to work. So, different tools for different states. The last two states are the blue state and the blue state and the purple state. And the blue state is a very essential state that you need to be in every day so that you can get the rest and repair that you need, that your body is so craving, especially before bed. So as you're doing this work, really keeping that in mind. This is going to be the deep rest and cellular regeneration that you need. And your body, you're going to know that you're in this state when your body feels calm, relaxed, right? You might feel that expansiveness in the chest. You feel grounded, you feel peaceful. You feel loving, you feel connected. So that is that blue state. The purple state is going to be a freeze response or emergency freeze response. And this is when you start to feel immobilized. And I just want to say about that, it's not always immobilized in the way that you're going to picture it, right? Because keeping in mind that something external is happening is triggering this response. And that external thing might be triggering like a past trauma for you. So, for example, a few months ago noticed that I have this weird freeze response when I'm in movie theaters and when I'm in certain social situations. And it took me a while to realize it because it was kind of a low grade freeze response. But I would notice certain thoughts that would go through my mind and like a weird kind of funky stiffiness, and like it wasn't quite paralyzing, but that my movement felt constrained in a weird way. And so something is there, right, that relates to maybe some past experience or trauma that I've had, maybe around socializing. Who knows? We got to get under the hood and see what's underneath that. But recognizing that freeze is going to show up in different ways, and it's going to show up sometimes when you're being reminded of something that has happened in the past. So it might not always look the way you expect it to, and it might not always show up in the places that you would expect it to. And for this one, you're just starting to gently come back into your body. So you can do some body tapping, right? Being loving and gentle and coming back into your body. Do a little bit of cardio movement that's activating so that you can start to bring the breath into the body, start activating you. So this again is where you, in a positive way, you're activating your nervous system. You're going into fight or flight, right? Because you're starting to get some energy going in there. You want to do that. And so that's a good technique for that. Next steps for doing this work on your own and starting to make these changes in your daily life are go ahead and download or print that matrix for yourself so you have it as a reference. And within there, I also have a blank copy so that you can start putting in your own body reactions or mind things that are coming up, and start doing that little bit of inventory of noticing what state you're in and when you're in it. I highly recommend that you start off by trying to identify states 5 times a day. And I know that might sound intimidating at first, but hear me out. So the first point in the day, I want you to start identifying the nervous system state that you're in is when you wake up. And the reason for that is probably however you woke up is the state that you slept in, right? So if you're waking up activated, you probably slept a little activated. So you're going to want to notice that right away so that you can manage that and deal with that, right? And then I want you to then next look at 3 peak times that you're feeling stressors during the day. And because you've been doing some body awareness and feeling into your body, noticing the cues of your body, you're probably going to be able to identify these without even having the experiences. Maybe just me saying that, you're like, oh, yeah, I know. Traffic, talking to my husband about bills, and having to deal with that coworker I don't like. Bam, bam, bam. Those are 3 times that I notice myself get, spiked or whatever. Great. Now start writing down what it is you're experiencing in the body, right? Doing that body mapping of like, oh, I'm holding my breath, or I'm feeling it in my jaw, and the thoughts that are coming with it, and what you're doing to regulate that or calm down when you're experiencing it. And then the last one, again, back to the kind of sleep that you're having, is start to identify the state that you're in before you go to bed. And if you are in an activated state, getting yourself into the ventral vagal state, right? Bringing yourself back down. That's going to be really important. The other thing is start to notice ways that you are doing some unhealthy coping. Because when you notice yourself doing, going to the pantry and just starting to eat for no reason, or getting on Instagram and scrolling for hours, or getting on the computer watching TV, this is going to be a sign to you that your nervous system is activated because it's trying to get away from something, right? It doesn't want to feel the thing that it's feeling. And so it's trying to get away from that. So that's a good point to be like, oh, I'm activated right now. Oh, let's do maybe a regulation activity instead of, eating everything at the pantry. And, that will be a great point for you to start making these tiny adjustments and doing the healing around the nervous system so that you're not doing the coping mechanisms. Also, recognize the ways in which you already have some self soothing, regulating activities. Like, I recognize that I sing, like, that is my way of feeling good in my body. And I've noticed that when I'm in a stressful situation, I'll just start singing. And I'm like, that's kind of random and weird. I'm like, oh, no, it's not. It's my body's natural way of coping and self soothing. And I can actually feel my nervous system come down and soften. I start to come into my heart. I love singing. I feel good. I feel connected. And that's my body's natural way. So if you already have some ways that you're naturally regulating, starting to be aware of those and then inputting those into your tools and using them consciously rather than just unconsciously. Start to notice when you're still revved up after an encounter and bring yourself down, right? So, a big part of what you're doing is making sure that you're not staying up in the red all the time. In fact, red things are going to be what you bring to the coaching session so that we can release those from your system. But when they do happen, right, you're not going to wait a week until you see me. You're not going to stay in red until you see me. Noticing, oh, I'm at home, but mentally I'm still thinking about that, conflict I had with the coworker 3 hours ago. It's still, oh, okay, I'm still pretty revved up. Let me do one of my regulation tools, see if I can get myself to calm down. And then testing out these regulation tools and bringing back to session what's working and what's not working so that we can really see the progress you're having and where you're getting stalled out, right? This is where we get that really high value in making changes is we start to recognize, oh, this works for us. This doesn't work for us. Oh, let's do this some more. Maybe let's not do this, or let's change it around and do it in a way that's more impactful. So I really want you to be able to get all the juice and all of the benefits out of this. So let's talk about it in session. All right. Well, that's all for now. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in session.